Hello everyone, so I want to try and talk about something a little bit different today. I want to talk about video games. And I realise that this is going to instantly put off probably a majority of people who watch my channel. But yeah. I never know how to lead into my friggin... Anyway, right, video games. So why am I talking about video games? What has motivated this video? Basically, disappointment. For the last, I don't know, 2-ish years, I felt, God, this is like a therapy session, I felt let down by a lot of the games that I've really looked forward to or other people have recommended to me. Since like halfway through 2010, most of the games that I've anticipated have just not been that good. And I just want to preface this by saying that if you want to come on here and start a flame war with someone about which is better, Pro Evo or FIFA, or Call of Duty or Battlefield, please don't. That's not what this is about. This is about me, alright? This is about me. It's all about me feeling let down by a lot of these so-called great titles that have come out lately. Let's go earliest to latest. Skate 3. The Skate games were revolutionary. They allowed you to articulate flip tricks and grab tricks and grinds with the Flick It system, and it was so much better and more satisfying to do that than it was with the system that was in place for Tony Hawk's. Tony Hawk started going downhill after American Wasteland. I liked American Wasteland, I know a lot of people didn't, but I kind of did. After that though, it was absolutely awful. They had terrible maps, terrible levels. It felt like they changed the engine that controlled how you moved your character. They brought in all these stupid features and took out all the good ones. None of the decent pros stayed on to make the games. And then you got stuff like Tony Hawk's Ride or whatever. It was just awful. They're just terrible. So the Skate series became sort of like a haven for people who really like skate games. Skate 1 was really good. Skate 2 was alright. Skate 3 was boring. It had pretty much zero narrative. It was just a series of tasks that you had to complete in order to complete the game. It wasn't in any way engaging story-wise. And I know what you're going to say, it's a skateboarding game, what do you expect? But even the first Skate had somewhat of a compelling narrative, at least enough of a narrative to keep you interested while you do all these tasks. Skate 3, it was just, you know, flip this, grab that, trick that. And in all likelihood, as far as I can tell through my research, they're not going to do another Skate video game. Or at least not in the near future. Tony Hawk's is apparently going to be releasing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD, I think it's called. Which isn't even a new game, it's just a reworking of some previous levels. So it basically means that these two titles have burnt themselves out so that there are, at the moment, 0 decent skateboarding games. The fuck? Moving on, LA Noire, what a letdown. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it was so highly hyped. It really amped me up to hear about all this motion scan software and stuff like that. The cool, you know, 1940s, 50s aesthetic and all that. It was really exciting. And admittedly, when I started playing it, the stories were pretty good, and the graphics were obviously fantastic with the use of the new motion scan technology. But the investigation storylines that you had to do, it got quite formulaic after a while. You know, you interrogate someone, they do this. Oh, you're not telling the truth. And it was satisfying when you got it right, but A, sometimes they were clearly, you know, indicating a certain answer and it wouldn't be that answer, and B, that got kind of boring after a while. There wasn't enough action, there wasn't enough variation. There was one decent shootout in the entire game. On top of that, the ending was bad, even though the lead up to it was pretty good and quite interesting. The ending was just so... It just fizzled out. And one of my main problems with the game is the fact that they set up this entire huge cityscape of LA, this huge map, and they gave you 0 incentive to explore it or to interact with it. You were sent on missions to a specific place, and you were given no reason to explore the city. Unlike in a game like GTA, where you are given every reason to interact with your surroundings as much as possible, LA Noire didn't give you any sort of incentive, and in some cases punished you for it. All in all, it was alright. Which, considering the level of attention and excitement that it gained during the run-up to its release, really was a massive disappointment. Okay, moving on. This one really hits home. Uncharted 3. This game got really good reviews. And I don't get it, okay? Yes, a lot of the levels were quite interesting. The castle in France, I think, the chateau, the cruise ship graveyard, and the cruise ship itself, pretty darn engaging. And I really appreciated the flashback element of the game, which enabled you to play as young Nate and meet younger Sully. Those were cool. Those were pretty interesting. But it had so many flaws. At least I think it did anyway. First of all, Chloe and the English guy just disappeared halfway through the game. They just straight up left. Some of the levels really, really sucked. The level where I think you were in Syria, that was so boring and so long. Ugh. The story sucked. The story was just awful. It was way too serious. It took itself way, way, way too seriously. What I appreciated about the previous Uncharted games was that they were, in essence, quite light-hearted. They were very epic and surrounded by a lot of gravitas, but at their core, they were fun. They were just fun. And this one was just crazy. The ending fucking sucked. The bit where you foil the villains, Marlowe and I think Talbot was the other guy's name. The bit where you foil their ultimate plan when they're trying to lift that big talisman thing out of the water, that happens during a cutscene. What the hell? One of my biggest problems with the game is that it didn't really innovate. It had some very similar set pieces. Like the bit when you're in the moving trucks and you're having to jump from truck to truck, or, you know, shoot at other people on other trucks, and then the bit at the end where the city collapses in on itself. You know, it was the same thing as the previous game. They didn't really add anything to the game, aside from, like, the hallucinations that Nate was having sometimes and the flashback, which was a narrative innovation. It wasn't a gaming innovation. The whole thing was just like a serious version of the previous games, but in the desert. And of course some of that does come down to personal preferences. For instance, I prefer the jungle to the desert, and this game was all fucking desert. The bit where you're actually in the Rub al Khali desert, and you're having to just fucking walk through this desert while this voiceover, while Marlowe's voiceover just talks to you. Oh my god, that was so boring. And Marlowe's hair, right? I'm sorry. Everything else about that game graphically was pretty good. Pretty decent, alright? Marlowe's hair was awful, and it just irritated me all the way through the game. All things considered, it wasn't terrible, but the point was, the hype that it got, and the reviews that it got from other people seemed to love it, and I went into it thinking that I'd think the same, and I just didn't at all. It was such a disappointment. At the end of it, I was like, that's it? I think I literally said, that's it? It was such a massive letdown. Moving on. Modern Warfare 3. I do prefer the Modern Warfare storyline to the Black Ops storyline, but I play them both, as I think most Call of Duty players do, and I thought that the Modern Warfare ending just didn't really do it justice. Considering how good Modern Warfare was, it ended with a fizzle rather than a bang. And I'm not really sure how to articulate why, because looking at it, it had a lot of the elements that I like in those kind of games, but it just didn't feel like it rounded the whole thing up with a satisfying ending. It certainly didn't live up to the hype, and it certainly didn't live up to what should have been a better ending to the story. As for the Black Ops storyline, which is continuing, I believe, the trailer for the new one just looks terrible. It's gone futuristic for some fucking reason. Why they thought that was a good idea blows my friggin' mind. And frankly, the customization of the multiplayer settings just irritates me. I don't want to see, you know, wads of cash spraying out of my body when I get shot. That's not because I lost, that's because it's totally unrealistic. It's sensationalizing the game, it's making it more than it needs to be. It makes it almost tacky. It's a first-person shooter video game, alright? What the hell? Whose idea was that? God. And right up to 2012, we have SSX, which is another game that I was really looking forward to. I loved SSX on tour. I thought it was great. I thought it was just a perfectly fun game. It was just a lot of fun. And this is just awful. And everyone seems to love it. I hate it. I think it's terrible. It just annoys me. The wingsuit is ridiculous. Whose fucking idea was it to put dubstep on every time you went into tricky mode? Real fucking modern, guys. You're really getting down with the kids with dubstep. Idiots. It had all this extra stupidity that it didn't need. It's a snowboarding game. You made it into something it's not. You can't even customize your own character. You have to play as these stupid idiots that are all taking themselves way too seriously. I'm a hard-to-get extreme sports chick. I'm gonna snowboard and then go motocross racing. I'm too hot to handle. Fuck off. I'm just gonna trade in SSX and just get SSX on tour, because I can't, it just annoys the piss out of me. Even the interface is just, it just irritates me. So fuck SSX. Again, everyone seemed to love that. I thought it was horrible. It felt to me like it was basically a crappy platformer within a snowboarding framework. You just had to basically slide through these levels, collect tokens and pull off moves. It was just, terrible, terrible, terrible. I hated it. And it's not just PlayStation 2 games. I play a PlayStation, as you can see. Again, don't make this about PlayStation versus Xbox. I don't want to fucking hear it. The point is, it's not just a console-based thing. I play Pokemon. Hopefully you'll all know by now, I am a huge Pokemon fan. And I was really looking forward to Pokemon Black and White. It was a new generation of Pokemon. It wasn't just a rehashing of an old game. And it sucked. Didn't like the Pokemon, didn't like the levels, didn't like the cities, didn't like the story. The story was far too silly. Again, took itself way too seriously. I didn't even really like the graphics. I think they're starting to get ahead of themselves, to be quite honest. With Pokemon, you really do need to keep it simple. I mean, the animation of the Pokemon during battles was fine, but like, the cities don't need to be like that. Keep it simple. And I know a lot of you are going to be like, well, what about games like Assassin's Creed or Skyrim? Assassin's Creed I might have played at some point, but my brother started playing on it before me, and it completely ruined the story for me. I knew what was happening, and I just couldn't get into it after that. Skyrim I've played on at my friend Dean's house, and I'm like, what the hell is all the fuss about this? Maybe again it's just personal preferences, but I don't understand what the whole medieval fantasy thing, I don't know why that appeals to people. It's just kind of lame. It's like LARPing, but in a video game. No offense if you're a LARPer. Although, yeah, I did just call you lame. Sorry. So yeah, those are just two games that I just couldn't get in. Portal 1. And she said, oh, I don't think we do. I think it's quite old. I think it was on the PlayStation 2. And I was like, oh, okay. Bearing in mind, I didn't know anything about this at the time. And I was like, oh, okay. But, okay, so can Portal 2 be played as a standalone game? She went, yeah, it totally can. So I got Portal 2, and this just annoyed me because that happens to not be the correct information about Portal 1. And even though it isn't essential to have played through the story of Portal 1 to get sucked into the story of Portal 2, when I was playing through Portal 2, I realised that a lot of this, at least the beginning story, depended on what happened in the first one. And the fact that she just straight up told me that, you know, Portal 2 is basically a standalone game, and I didn't get to play that one before I played Portal 2. I didn't get to play them in a linear progression, chronologically. That fucking annoyed me, so fuck you, game. I hope you do go out of business, you dickheads. But anyway, Portal 2. Portal 2 was fucking amazing. One of my favourite games of all time. The gameplay is obviously incredibly original. The voices from Stephen Merchant and I think J.K. Simmons were great. The story was great, even though there was quite a small amount of interaction with other characters. I mean, there was a lot of interaction with characters, it was just you and like two other characters max, but it was still great. It was really, really funny. Stephen Merchant just made that character his own. It was just a great game. It was fantastic. The third game that I really, really liked from the past 2 years was Limbo. Now, I didn't actually ever own this game. I played on it on my friend Dean's Xbox and absolutely loved it. I wouldn't say it was perfect, and Portal 2 was close to perfect, because I sort of preferred the first half to the second half, which I think a lot of people did, but it was still really, really, really good. Really original, really engaging, very, very artistic. So we've got Red Dead Redemption, Portal 2, and Limbo. 3 games that I really, really liked in the past about 2 to 3 years. And I've played a lot of video games in the past 2 to 3 years. And some of the ones that I was most looking forward to, games like, you know, SSX, Uncharted 3, the Modern Warfare series, Call of Duty in general, a lot of them were just disappointing. Just massive letdowns. And on top of that, a lot of people really, really, really liked them. And I don't get it at all. I don't get how anyone could have thought that Uncharted 3 was anything special compared to Uncharted 2. SSX is an abomination as far as I'm concerned. I can't play it. It irritates me to my very core, and when I play it, some of the most evil and tumultuous parts of me bubble forth to the surface. You know, that's the kind of bile that it incites in me. I'm straight up going to trade it in and just get SSX on tour again. At the very least, I'll be listening to some half-decent music on there instead of fucking dubstep. Morons. So there you go. That's my rant about shit games for the past 2 to 3 years. Can anyone suggest anything to me? Alright, I like sports games, I like adventure games, I like action games, I like games that innovate, I like games that are interesting, I like games that are artistic. I don't really like horror games. Don't suggest anything like Silent Hill or any sort of... I just hate games like that. But can anyone suggest any decent games for me to play? Because I fucking hate so many of these games that I was really looking forward to, and it's just a world of depression for me. And I just feel like recently, in recent years, I just feel so dead inside with respect to that part of me. And that's sad, alright? That's really sad. Any ideas? Any help? Can someone please help me get my video gaming mojo back? God damn it. SSX is terrible. What a horrible, awful game. Sorry.